This is actually a fabulous evening for you to become informed. And for those who don't know, if I look a little familiar, it's because I adorned your lawns throughout the mayoral campaign this year and had my face on the call flute that these fabulous people now have their faces on all around the region. As part of the mayoral campaign, we did 17 Meet the Candidate evenings like this evening. So the fact that this is their number 2, I don't think we need to feel too sorry for them at all that they're up there in the spotlight. So I'm feeling quite relaxed tonight. I did make sure I wore my very independent neutral colours. Didn't change my blue eyes though, which was quite the comment, so sorry about that to those that aren't blue. I would like to thank the candidates though, because it is actually quite an experience to put yourself in this position, and having done it once now at a mayoral level, I totally understand how it can actually change your life. So thank you for giving us options so that we actually are part of a democracy, and tonight we are here to hear from each of you so that we can make our own call on who we would like to vote for in October. And in particular, I'd actually like to thank each and every person in this room, because an informed voter is a great voter. An informed voter is somebody who knows what they're doing on the 26th of October, and because they have been part of an evening like tonight, they've read the articles, they've asked the questions, and so taking your time out tonight is not undervalued in any way, shape or form, because we understand there are potentially other things that you could be doing with your time, but you're here to make sure that our great region is actually represented by the best candidate, whoever that may be. So tonight Craig mentioned, it will be a respectful evening. The Caloundra Residents Association, when they first asked me to do this, were hoping to get 80 registrations, would be very, very happy with 100, and actually had 145 people register. I would say there's some people lost on between Golden Beach and here, but they might start trickling in throughout the evening. But thank you so much for being part of this evening. We do have quite a process. So what we are going to do is very shortly, I'm going to offer each of the candidates a 3-minute opening remarks session. So they will come up here if they would like to. If they're more comfortable there, that's okay as well. But if they'd like to take the lectern, then they're very welcome. They will do a 3-minute opening. This is who I am and this is what I stand for. At the 2-minute mark, Alyssa will actually let you know that you've got 1 minute left. At the 3-minute mark, I will just take over the microphone. Because for those who know me, you know I quite enjoy taking over a microphone. So we will be keeping to time this evening, and that's why we have Alyssa over there on the time. We have provided the candidates with 6 questions that they had before this evening, so they had pre-warning about these questions, and we will ask those 6 questions first. They will have 2 minutes each to answer, and they'll do that from the chairs where they are. So they'll kindly pass the microphone along in a very, very lovely manner to their fellow candidate, and they will answer in 2 minutes. Once again, Alyssa will time that, and she will give you a 10-second call, and at the 2-minute mark, I'll just start talking again. So this could be a fun night for me. So the first 6 questions that were delivered to the candidates before this evening. There'll be 4 extra questions that they actually only just received 30 minutes before you took the stage. So those 4 questions they're aware of, but they haven't had any time to prep. And they have come from within the Caloundra Residents Association, these questions, and they're actually very good questions. I was actually quite glad I didn't have to answer them, to be honest. And then we actually have, on your way in, you were offered the opportunity to write a question. Those questions will be moderated. Hopefully, if we stick to time, we will have time for some of those questions. That's why it's so important that we do stick to time. They will be provided to me at the end of the evening, and we'll get through as many as we can. However, the important thing to remember is that over the next however many days, you actually have access to these candidates, and we will be providing you with their details. So if you don't get to ask your question after the official proceedings, obviously grab them as well, but you will have their contact details so that you can ask them in the lead up any other questions that you need to be able to make your decision. So let's get started, because I could actually talk all night because I'm pretty good at it. And let's welcome up Dr. Peta Higgs for her 3-minute opening.
Thank you so much. Is that working? No. Hello? Yep.
Just hold this.
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity to meet you all, and thank you to the Caloundra Residents Association. I always start my talks as a doctor with my conflict of interest. So I have worked for Queensland Health for over 30 years now. I'm also a sole practitioner in private practice here on the Sunshine Coast. But I'm not here to represent myself, I'm here to represent the Greens. I'm delighted to be your Greens candidate for Caloundra. The Greens don't take donations from big corporations or fossil fuel companies. We're a grassroots political organisation. We get our money from our members and a lot of hard work from volunteers. So we kind of see things a little bit differently. We can tackle issues differently because we're not beholden to big corporations. I became involved with the Greens because I do want action on climate. I can already see the effects that that's having on healthcare for our community. But I also realise that if we don't help people when they're at their most vulnerable, then we can't tackle those issues. I'm constantly hearing from my patients that they cannot afford the treatment that I'm prescribing. I'm not talking about fancy technology. I'm talking about basic medications and visits to allied health. It's not good enough. In a place like Australia, we shouldn't have our most vulnerable people not being able to afford these things. We want to address the problem that I know that you care about, that we're going to be talking about tonight. That's housing, cost of living, transport, the environment, healthcare and education. We want to make big corporations pay their fair share and raise revenue for these essential services. We're going to do that by raising the base rate of mining royalties and winding back fossil fuel subsidies. And that way we can afford things like free GP clinics, I'm really excited about that, which will include mental health and allied health. We want to fund our public hospitals. And thank you. We want to increase public transport with free and frequent public transport, affordable and sustainable housing, and I'm going to get a chance to tell you about our plans there. Our policies are big, they're bold, but it's pretty clear that we need real change. We can do this. We can help our community become climate resilient. We can protect our environment and biodiversity, which we desperately need to do. Planetary health is human health, and nothing changes if nothing changes. Thank you very much.
And under time, good start. Jason Hunt.
Thank you very much. My name is Jason. It's been my absolute privilege to be the member for Caloundra since 2020. I've introduced myself a lot at forums, so there's some repetition here. Some of you will have heard this, some of you will not have, but I'm 54 years old. I have a Bachelor of Education with a major in History and Social Science, although I only ever did a tiny bit of supply teaching on the Sunshine Coast. I grew up here in Caloundra from 1973, so I've been here about 51 years. Educated at Curramundi Primary School and Caloundra High School. Left school, joined the regular army after a little while working at the Caloundra Civic Centre, and in the army I was a Morse code operator with a spectacularly unsuccessful level. So they essentially kicked me out as a Morse code operator and transferred me to armoured vehicles, where I became an armoured vehicle crewman in 2nd 14th Light Horse Regiment in Brisbane. I very much enjoyed that, and then from there I got out, went to university, that's where I acquired the degree, and then went to work in Queensland Corrective Services. So I was a custodial officer in the state's largest high security prison for 21 years, which has given me an appreciation of community safety in keeping with the appreciation that I learned around being in the military as well. Dealing with criminals for 21 years really gives you an insight as you see, you know, I wasn't an elected MP in those days, but as you see various government programs unfold, you see what works and what doesn't work, and it gives you a sense of, you know, what you might like to pursue in the future. So what I'd like to do, if you would gift me the position of being MP for another term, is to continue on with the work and build on the work that I have started. So we have built, down to a minute already, is that right? Okay, so we built a major road, the Bells Creek Arterial, the first major road project here since the Nickel Way was extended and gazetted in 1977. We have put the biggest rail infrastructure program into place. Finally, after 40 years of inaction, we have built 2 schools in this term down in Caloundra South. We built a police station, a fire station, and an ambulance station. And all of those are absolutely critical, but I would like to also continue delivering the cost of living measures that are absolutely number one in the community, that I have been told about from door knocking and phone calling for the last 4 years. We never stopped community consultation in my office, and people keeping one nostril above water in the cost of living situation at the moment is probably the number one priority that I would like to pursue over the next 4 years. So, Min, in keeping with your desire to go short, I've gone short.
Love it. Kendall, Morton.
Thank you, Min. Firstly, can I just acknowledge and thank the Caloundra Residents Association for giving us the opportunity to showcase what we're all about, and thank you to all of you for coming. So, as you would know, I'm Kendall, your LNP candidate for this state election, and I have been in Caloundra now for almost 20 years. And one of my favourite things about this place is that, like many of the people in this room, you've all moved from somewhere else. And the second that you move to our beautiful part of the world, you become a local and you're welcome here. And that's what Caloundra did for me. So I moved here as a primary school teacher, and I taught at the local, at Golden Beach here, and also at Talara. And it was an amazing way to meet a lot of people, and then went on to do a Bachelor of Accounting before having my children. I've got 4 mostly beautiful children that are all giants, which is hilarious. And they go to the actual local state schools here. And I'm very, very proud of our community, and proud to raise my children here. I also started a business here, and that was the beginning of a very fascinating journey in terms of connection to community. So that business grew and grew and grew, and I sold it last year with a team of 150. And I firmly believe that in order to create change, we firstly must start electing people that understand a profit and loss statement. So I have a plan for Caloundra that comes from many of those life experiences. You cannot work so hard, have children, talk to the community, engage with the community without knowing how to get things done. And I have door-knocked so much of this electorate this year and phone called so many people. I've literally spoken to thousands of you, thousands. And the process was to take that data, that every single conversation that I've had over 12 months, to measure what is important to this community. Take that and fight for it and commit to it. And so you will learn about what my plan is for Caloundra, which is based on what you all told me as the night goes on. But also just know that an LNP government knows that we get one really good shot to prove ourselves if we're elected this year. We've only held government once in the last 34 years, and we are not going to waste that opportunity. And the LNP's plan is focused around housing, health, cost of living and crime, but I am here to give back to a community that has given me every possible opportunity you could ever ask for. So looking forward to tonight, and thank you very much.
Great start on the keeping to time. So just a reminder, the answers to your questions are 2 minutes. So that was 3, so you've kind of got the idea around how long and how fast that can go. So we will start with you, Jason, in the middle, if we can pass the microphone along. So what we are going to do is we're going to rotate the order in which they answer to make it really fair for everybody, so that the third person doesn't get to just bounce off the first 2 every single time. So this has been a very well thought out run sheet. Well done to Caloundra Residents Association. So we are starting with transport, because that is a top topic. Caloundra residents are currently faced with highly congested roads and a lack in public and active infrastructure. What is your commitment for addressing these major transport infrastructure shortfalls in and around Caloundra? Time start.
So the business case for the two villains in Caloundra, as far as roads go, are the 2 roundabouts. Both of those business cases are underway. The one at the Nickel Way roundabout that business case has just started. The one at the Bells Creek Arterial, that is just about complete. But that's insofar as roads go. Roads are only part of the solution. We can keep building roads and chasing our tail with roads forever, amen. And you'll never ever have enough lanes and enough roads and enough slip lanes to cover the growth in traffic. So we have to look at other areas and other means. Better public transport, cheaper public transport, like the 50-cent fares that are being rolled out now, and the largest public transport infrastructure project that the Sunshine Coast has ever seen. In the first instance, it's coming into Caloundra at a mere $5.5 billion, and this has been talked about for such a long time. This is the core sample from the very first drilling rig that has already started work. This is a $5.5 billion piece of rock, essentially. This was such a long time coming. And to address the point about the coverage of the political coverage, one party held this seat for 116 years. The member before me was a cabinet minister. The member before him was the state treasurer of Queensland. And the member before her was a premier. And the member before him was another premier. So these infrastructure shortfalls, the buck passing, that doesn't wash anymore. So the 2 business cases are up, and it's important that if we're going to get these major transport infrastructure projects up, that we do not undercook the figures. So you cannot talk about, is that me? Oh, you can't talk about $1.5 million worth of costing with a $400 million envelope.
And when I say well done, I mean on time. I'm not assessing what they're saying. I'm totally independent. I'm also a very active listener, so I nod a lot. That's also just me being an active listener and not agreeing or disagreeing. Kendall, would you like to give us your 2-minute response to that question?
Okay, so the number 1 issue for this electorate over and over again is traffic congestion. So we have, as I said, only held government once in this electorate or in this state in the last 34 years. So there has been a complete and utter lack of infrastructure investment, particularly over the last decade. So we have committed to $400 million for 5 critical road projects in Caloundra. Now, this is a significant investment, and it is $400 million more than any other state electorate, any other amount of funding that we've seen. Now, those 5 projects are designed to do 2 things on the back of identifying the 9 pain points around the electorate where traffic doesn't flow, and also any and all transport studies, feasibility studies, business cases, those things. So the 2 things it's designed to do are 1, keep traffic moving around the electorate, and 2, direct traffic off Caloundra Road, provide alternate access routes so we can get around. So traffic infrastructure is so critical for you guys, number 1, over and over again, but this commitment also includes that every single one of these projects will commence in the next term of government. Now, from a statewide perspective, whatever happens, that's fine. Here in Caloundra, this is what we need. We've still got 35,000 people to go into Aura. We've got Biwa East earmarked. Our population has grown so rapidly and the infrastructure simply doesn't meet it, not for now or in the future. And LNP government has also acknowledged that public transport is a very important part of that plan, and part of that plan is to take the heavy rail all the way through to Maroochydore. It will be an embarrassment if we have the greatest event in South East Queensland here in 2032 and the rail stops here, making Caloundra a car park on the fourth most congested intersection in Queensland.
Thank you so much. So the Greens are definitely committed to reducing the problem behind your traffic congestion, and that is by improving public transport. We want to transition to free public transport by 2026 and improve infrastructure, frequency and coverage to manage that increased demand. We're going to have frequent public transport at a minimum of 15 minutes, similar to the current City Glider services in Brisbane. It's great that Labor and LNP have picked up on our long-standing policy for cheap public transport, but too many people are still missing out on the 50-cent fares because public transport coverage in the area is so poor. We will create new high-frequency buses all over Queensland, boost the rail network in South East Queensland. We're going to talk about that shortly as well. Invest in more bus lanes to cut traffic, and also a Sunshine Coast rapid transit system. We want to make public transport a real option for everyone. Part of that can be funded by pulling out of the current private ticketing contracts. So currently we're paying an external contractor to ticket for these 50-cent fares. It's costing us more money than we're collecting, and we're also paying people to chase up and fine people $700 for avoiding a 50-cent fare. You can all see that that's ridiculous. So that's our main plan, is that rapid transition to frequent and free public transport for you. Thank you.
We are going to give the candidates 2 minutes at the end to do some closing remarks and some rebuttals, so we're not doing that all the way through. At the end they will get a 2-minute time period. So the second question, which we will start with you, Kendall, if we can pass the microphone. Recreational green spaces are understood to be of increased importance with the increased density that is coming. The proposed transport infrastructure projects will impact local green spaces. How will you minimise the impact on flora and fauna, and how will you replace the lost recreational green spaces locally?
So we are committed to working with all relevant bodies in regards to this issue. I don't think there's a single party that doesn't recognise the importance of green space and the environment in terms of the way that we move forward as a state. A great example of this is an announcement that we made today. So when we talk about the proposed BY East development, the BY Golf Club actually sits in that area, and the BY Golf Club has been incredibly concerned over a number of years about their security in their golf club and their golf course. So we announced today a 99-year lease for the BY Golf Club, because hopefully by that time, whatever happens with BY East will be done and dusted, and it means that they have security, because those kind of spaces that are community spaces that mean so much to all of us are protected. Now, in terms of our natural flora, fauna and environment, you may have also seen last week, you've only got to look out this window here to know that this is a really big part of our natural environment, and protecting it has been a great concern to our community. And we announced a, excuse me, I have honestly just talked for a year now and I'm running out of voice, a $35 million Waterways Authority. And what a Waterways Authority does is that it's a legislative body that has the jurisdiction to work with community and council to protect the natural environment, the foreshore, and make decisions about what needs to happen regarding our environment. So we're very, very committed to recreational and green space, and I think any person in politics should have that view moving forward.
Peta?
Thank you. So this is obviously a good one for a Greens candidate. One of our key pillars is environment and sustainability, and that matches beautifully with our need for green spaces. They're vital for communities. As a doctor, I also know that they actually reduce stress and anxiety and lower blood pressure. And the dosage is really small. We actually need only about 30 minutes a week. So I'm prescribing that for you all today. We also know that green spaces absorb and redistribute water, absorb sunlight and heat. So heat waves are going to be another major concern with climate change. They affect the most vulnerable of our communities, the older people, the really young, people with comorbidities and pregnant people. So that's absolutely important that we minimise that impact and have those green spaces in our infrastructure. To minimise impact for our flora and fauna, we want to reduce road usage and avoid the need for road expansion projects. We all know that one of the greatest dangers to our fauna is cars and roadkill. So we need to ensure that any residential developments that go ahead have those green spaces and infrastructure so that people don't have to get in their car every time they need to go somewhere. People do actually want to work, live and play in a fairly small community, and so that they don't have to have such enormous need for roads and more building and encroaching on those green spaces.
Thank you. As part of the package of road upgrades that the LNP announced recently, which was, again, I stress, $1.1 billion short in its costings, one of those initiatives was to drive 4 lanes right through Ben Bennett Park and through Bicentennial Park in Caloundra. I really hate that idea. A few people in this room know that I have opposed that idea. I'm not opposed to the road, but talk about protecting green spaces. That road will bisect Caloundra. 4 lanes is really, really wide, and it will become a moat, and it will go through Ben Bennett and it will go through Bicentennial Park. And one of the models that I saw said that it will move 20,000 cars. This is backed by the LNP. 20,000 cars into Caloundra off Milton Way. Where are you going to put 20,000 cars in the Caloundra CBD as things stand currently? That is a dreadful idea, and I'm opposed to it. What I have done locally is saved 192 hectares of native forest at Fernie Forest. That forest was due to be logged by my government, I should add. It was due to be logged, and I stood in with the help of a lot of local environmental campaigners and Greens, not so much Greens, but green people, not so much Martians either. And we stopped it. We saved 192 hectares from going under the axe, and I'm extremely proud of that. And I think one of the things that I'm proud about is you have to have the ability to stand up to your own party when they do things like that. So when they do say that we want to drive 4 lanes through Bennett Park, you have to be able to say, well, actually, no, that's not such a hot idea. 2 lanes is perfectly fine. I'll never get the rest out in 10, so thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, and we'll start with you, Peta. The delivery cost and capacity of the proposed heavy rail line are publicly debated between parties. By 2032, how far are you committing for the direct heavy rail line to go, and where will the stations be located? How can we be confident that you can deliver this project on time and on budget?
Well, as we've mentioned, we're certainly committed to the heavy rail to Maroochydore, and also duplication from Beerburrum to Nambour, and begin planning for a second Sunshine Coast Rail connection for faster and express services. Hopefully that will be on time. Obviously, there are always contingencies there. As to budget, we would plan to budget for all of these changes by raising the base rate of mining royalties and winding back fossil fuel subsidies. So for the decade coming up to 2023, big mining companies exported 634 billion of resources from Queensland. They paid 9% in royalties, and 10 of the largest mining companies paid 0 in corporate tax. When I'm told that they want to look after small business, I'm like, Can I have that deal for my small business? We want to increase the royalties to 35%. They do that in countries like Norway, and they have free childcare, free education, free university. By doing that, we can raise 61 billion over 4 years. This can help us fund the kind of community projects that we need. As to the location, I understand it is Marimba, Caloundra, Aruna, Batinya, Mountain Creek and Maroochydore. Oh, thank you.
Jason.
Thank you. So this project is only starting because of the state and federal Labor government. You can try and slice that pie any other way you like, but there's 2.75 billion on the table from the feds and 2.75 billion on the table from the state. No one else has ever committed money in a past budget for this project. And bear in mind, this has been talked about since I was a Year 10 student at Caloundra High School in 1985. And in that entire time, with a Conservative member who was a Premier, another one who was the State Treasurer no less, and another one who was a Cabinet Minister, the LNP has not advanced that project 1 inch or put 1 cent into this project. It will eventually get to Maroochydore, but it was always coming through Caloundra in the first phase. Anyone who says that they can get this to Maroochydore by 2032 is flying in the face of every piece of independent expert advice. You try and get that to Maroochydore at the same time as the Olympics, you will end up with a 34-kilometre construction site and no rail into the Sunshine Coast at all. It will not turn Caloundra into a car park. It will take traffic off the road. There will be car parks at the stations. There'll be 600 available at Caloundra and 500 at the stations at Marimba. That include, not including the overpass and the elevated track that's got to come in behind the wetlands. It's a massive piece of engineering. It will also include a bus centre at the Caloundra station to take people to and from that station, again, to get cars off the road. But let me be absolutely clear, only one party has ever put money in the budget for this, and only one party is starting it. It has never been able to get off the ground or fire before, and that's why we're doing it.
To be fair, we actually did have a federal government who did commit money to it and a state Labor government who did not. So it has been played politics with for a very, very, very long time. Now, as I said before, we have committed to taking the rail all the way to Maroochydore by 2032. And the reason for that is because we absolutely cannot afford for this not to happen. It's a critical piece of infrastructure. It will be an absolute disaster if it doesn't. And how are we going to do that? Well, A, we're not going to take advice from anyone who belongs to a government with cost blowouts on a constant basis. And we are very confident in our costings of our road projects. But the other way we're going to do it is our second priority, straight after rewriting the Youth Justice Act, is to reinstate the Productivity Commission. And the role of the Productivity Commission is to determine why projects are not being delivered on time and on budget, and there are cost blowouts of, in some cases, billions of dollars. So we are committed to a 100-day review. If we're lucky enough to win government this month, we need 100 days to figure out how that rail will go all the way to Maroochydore by 2032. And if it's not done, like if the rail is not done, then we get further and further and further behind. We get more and more and more congested roads, and it becomes more and more of an issue. Because guess what? In the 34 years, bar 2012 to 2015, the cost has gone up and up and up and up. At one point in 2005, when it was, floated around a budget, it was $1 billion back then. So if it's not done by 2032, what does the cost look like by 2042 or 2052? It doesn't get cheaper, and it has to be done for the sake of our region.
Can we thank the candidates for how they're sticking to time? This is well done. So we will start with you, Jason, on this question. Once again, we are still on the questions that they did know we were going to ask this evening. So the question is, what do you see are the issues underlying homelessness in the Caloundra electorate, and what strategies will you implement in the next term if elected? What do you commit to delivering for social and affordable housing, specifically in 4551 and more broadly on the Sunshine Coast in the next term if elected? They're very specific questions looking for commitment here.
The commitment, I think, should be more broader than 4551. I'm not going to change the question, but the postcode only covers part of the electorate of Caloundra. So it speaks about Caloundra, Landra, and Biwa. We shouldn't forget that. One of the driving forces here is rent affordability and cost of living. So all of these cost of living measures that the government is rolling out is, as I said at the outset, aimed at giving people the ability to keep one nostril above water. The electricity rebates, the rego rebates, the 15 hours of free kindy, the free TAFE for your adolescent kids, that sort of thing. That's freeing up income that allows you to put it back into keeping a roof over your head. Cracking down, I think, on the scourge of Airbnbs. I think keeping Airbnbs open around the Sunshine Coast and vacant for 8 months of the year, I think that's an issue, and I would like to look at that personally myself. Our government has boosted support in the last budget to agencies that deal with the homeless and homelessness by 20%. So they've all got a big lift, but that is treating the symptom, not the disease. So it goes back to that availability of land, the cost of living, and also working with providers like Churches of Christ and Coast of Bay. We have rolled out some absolutely fantastic housing unit complexes right around from Biwa, Yandina, Narimba, Baringa, Banya, and Caloundra, and they're all targeted at 1 and 2 bedroom units, and targeting the demographic that is facing homelessness most, which is women over 55. You get those people out of the existing social houses and you free up the larger social houses for families who are needing it as well.
I and the LNP 100% recognise that we are living in a time with a housing crisis, and the number one reason why housing prices and rent prices are increasing is a complete and utter lack of supply. It's pretty basic economics, and the principles with that are that we simply are 1 million homes short in southeast Queensland. So our policies around housing are all about addressing the over 40,000 Queenslanders that are on the social housing wait list, making sure people can actually own their own home, and that is a realistic dream. When we compare state by state, we have the lowest rates of home ownership here in Queensland in the country, and we are committed to our policies making sure that goes from the bottom of the report card up to the top. I met a lovely woman a couple of months ago, and she was 7 to 8 months pregnant when I met her, and she had a 10-year-old son, and she has been on the wait list for social housing for 7 years. She's reached out to everyone possible to help and keeps getting, there's not enough, there's not enough, there's not enough. Now, part of our housing policies are we also are axing a tax. So that is the first home builders grant for people building their first home, because the best investment that we can have into increasing supply in the housing market is for more homes to be built. And we will work with local governments in order to unlock land while still, for this electorate, prioritising the infrastructure that has to go with them. We also have a shared equity scheme and have a commitment to working with faith-based organisations, but what we've identified loud and clear for the people that are local is that the big gap exists in the absence of crisis accommodation. So plans take a long time, but what do we do with the people who are facing or homeless today? And there'll be something coming soon around that too, but I can't say. Thank you.
you. As my previous answer has been quite short, I'm going to request an extra minute for this one because we've got lots to talk about. Sorting out the homelessness in 2 minutes. How easy is that? So firstly, we need to start by acknowledging that a lot of homelessness is due to mental health. We've forced a lot of people with mental health issues out onto the street. The Greens want to start initiatives such as free GP clinics, which include mental health. Mental health is a basic right, not a luxury, and we want to employ 1,000 clinical and registered psychologists and 20 free sessions for mental health for everyone every year. We need to look at housing affordability. In Caloundra, rents are up by 43% since 2021. We want to freeze and cap rent increases for the next 2 years to allow wages to catch up. And after that, they can only be gone up by 1% per year. Renters will also have increased rights with guaranteed rights to lease renewal and strengthen minimum rental standards. We want to build public houses. For too long, the old two parties have left the supply of homes to private developers. Imagine what would happen if we left healthcare and education to only private institutions. You know what's going to happen, and that's exactly what's happened. The prices have gone up. We want to build homes that people can actually afford, that are sustainable, with insulation, high ceilings, cross ventilation and shared spaces and green spaces with gardens and courtyards. We also want to develop cheaper mortgages by a public bank, a state government owned bank like we used to have, with interest rates 1.5 lower than the current Big Four. We can do that by cutting out corporate profits and CEO salaries. Currently the 4 big banks make 30 billion of profit every year. There's a bit of fat we can cut there. We'll offer savings accounts and credit cards for households and FTOS with free no transaction fees for small businesses. Thank you.
Okay, the 5th question, cost of living. This is a big one. I know you're all looking forward to this because you'll all have policies on this one. Kendall, we'll start with you. There are significant concerns around the impacts of the increased cost of living. What specific plans does your party have for addressing the impacts?
So some of our policies to address the cost of living, and it is one of our big 4, is the first one is, you may have seen this week, we announced that we are going to address the patients tax introduced by the Labor government, and this tax is a payroll tax imposed on GPs. So after speaking to so many GPs around Caloundra, the only outcome of this patient's tax is that the cost of visiting a GP will increase. As bad as some GPs have even said it would then be unsustainable for them to continue in their business model with their GP practice. So imagine a world where people cannot go to the doctor and go to the GP simply because they don't exist. And what we do know is that the rates of GPs specialty is falling compared to prior years because we already have a shortage. Now, the second way that we're going to address the cost of living and reduce the cost of living for Queenslanders is we are going to make sure the Callide Power Station is maintained under the maintenance guarantee, which has now been offline for over 1,000 days. And as a result, the cost of energy has increased in Queensland by 20% in the last year, to the point where the current Energy Minister will actually be in court tomorrow answering why the maintenance guarantee was not upheld. So at the moment, the low cost available energy solution we have is making sure our power stations are maintained so our electricity bills do not continue to skyrocket above and beyond every other state in this country in the last 12 months. And then of course we're going to address youth crime, which means your insurance premiums are going to continue to go through the roof in the biggest increases that we've seen ever before.
Thank you. So yes, we're all very, very aware that the cost of living has been going up very steeply. So we want to look at capping prices for groceries. We want to look at the duopoly of Coles and Woolworths, which have the highest profit margins in the developed world. They also thank you very much. They also made huge donations of 6.9 billion to Labor and LNP over the last decade. So we know that they don't have any appetite for big changes here, but we can do it. We can cap prices for 30 basic essentials such as bread, milk and nappies. They've done it in France, it is possible. We also want to stop dodgy behaviour, and we've heard about that, those practices by those two big institutions with a fair prices authority. We also want to look at absolute free education. Public schools are currently underfunded by 1.7 billion every year. We want to fully fund state schools to 100% of the minimum national standards and offer free sport for kids with a free season of community sport, $150 for equipment vouchers, more sports fields and grants for clubs. We want to look towards 100% publicly owned renewable energy to cut power bills. Queensland is already doing that. We lead the way in Australia with already over 50% of houses have rooftop solar. In Caloundra we have the local renewable energy zone, allowing those households to put their energy into batteries. We want to invest further with 65 billion in new publicly owned renewable storage and grid upgrades. And that will estimate cut power bills by $530 per year for households. That's going to be the help of cost of living that we actually need.
Well, we're already doing it. So free TAFE, 15 hours of free kindy makes a huge difference for most families. But also the electricity rebates. The electricity rebates are so good that I've had pensioners come into my office and break down saying thank you. And that's not an exaggeration. I had a bloke called Les come in and he tried to say thank you 3 times and couldn't finish the sentence because it was making such a difference to him. All funded by progressive coal royalties that the LNP can't match because they don't back them. The rego rebate is which we're rolling out now and will continue for the next 12 months. The 50-cent the 50-cent fares for public transport. That is also having a massive impact on people and commuters. I wasn't sure how it would go in Caloundra, but it's gone really, really well. I'll tell you what we won't do though. We've got a Facebook ad here from the LNP from the 8th of May, and it's called Queensland Under Pressure, Stand Up to the Pressure. Today we're asking for your support to make a real difference for Queenslanders and the strain faced by Queenslanders with cost of living, crime and health. Stand up to the pressure and give to the Pressure Relief Fund. And it's a Facebook ad targeted at pensioners about cost of living relief. And when you click on the tab, it invites you to donate to the LNP. So the LNP solution to the cost of living crisis in May was a Facebook ad targeted at pensioners, telling them to give them money. That was their solution to cost of living. And as soon as it was pointed out, I've got to tell you, it disappeared off their Facebook page and about 5 minutes later. But that's the sort of cynical approach to cost of living we don't need. These other measures that I've mentioned that are funded by progressive coal royalties are making a difference to families right now. I've been door knocking for 4 years. I have, since being elected, I have seen the difference that people have transitioned once these things have rolled out. Freeing up income for rent, medicine, accommodation, fuel.
You don't know who's coming next. It's a surprise. We like to keep you on your toes. These are the questions you know, so we had to throw something in that you didn't know. Can we thank Alyssa for a really delicate little timer as well? It's not one of those raucous bells that you hear so often. Okay, so our final question that they were aware of and could prepare for, and this is a very interesting one. So the interurban break is known as the green space roughly between Caboolture and the Sunshine Coast. Currently the state and local council are in disagreement as to where the boundaries for the interurban break should lie. The question is, please detail your position and your intended actions for the future of the interurban break. Where do you believe the boundaries should be drawn to assure its effective protection? And we will start with you, Peta.
Thank you. So obviously the Greens would be very supportive of the interurban break for environment, recreation, economical and cultural values. I would be very keen to work with Sunshine Coast Council and the Morton Bay Council and with other state government, because I believe it also goes along Pumice-Stone and Glasshouse. I would be supportive of the council boundaries, and we need to ensure world best practice standards. We need to protect those waterways and our beautiful Pumice-Stone Passage for the water quality, improve the biodiversity and ecosystems that we rely upon. I understand that there is an increased need for development for housing, but not uncontrolled urban sprawl. We need smart regional planning to protect habitats, and we need research into this area as to what we have to protect.
Awesome job. Jason.
Yeah, I suspect I'll be short because it's not too difficult a question. The interurban break should be as wide and as green as we can possibly make it. No one wants to see a line of houses from Coolangatta to Cairns. So it should be robust and it should be big. I've seen 3 different versions of the interurban break. I've seen the council version, the state government version, and a developer's version. And there is still, I'm not kidding, there is still no firm agreement because there is, as you might be aware, a development application in around what used to be called Halls Creek is now called Aura South. I have some strong views on that development, but I think we need to pull the interurban break as far north as we possibly can. And if that development was to go ahead in any way, shape or form, it can't go ahead in its current form because it's absolutely enormous and it would put a lot of strain on the infrastructure that's there right now. So interurban break, bigger, greener and protected as soon as we can do it.
The current interurban break is established very clearly in the South East Queensland Plan, and the LNP and myself do not support any reduction to that. The reality is, as Jason mentioned, is there is a development application in regards to Halls Creek, and that is currently sitting against the EPBC, which is the environmental body, and we'll await the outcome of the report and recommendations. But as we currently stand, just to be very clear, we do not support any reduction to the interurban break that is currently established in the South East Queensland Plan.
Okay, so now we're moving into the questions that they only received 30 minutes before stepping on the stage, so this could get interesting. Once again, we'll keep rotating the order and still just the 2 minutes. I love this first one because it asks for a commitment within a defined period of time, but it asked for 6 months. In the mayoral campaign, we got 30 days. So you guys have got a whole heap of relaxation going on there because we were asked to commit to getting things done within 30 days. So here we are. There are 9 major transport infrastructure projects planned for a 5-kilometre radius within Caloundra CBD over the next decade. Jason, we are going to start with you. The question is, will you commit to implementing the CRA initiated in principle agreement with Council and the Department of Transport and Main Roads for an integrated transport engagement with input from all key stakeholders reflecting the diversity of our local community within the first 6 months of your term, if elected?
That's a heck of a question.
That was a long question even to read. I'm a little breathless right now, so over to you.
The preamble to be proud of. So I'll start with the bad news first. I cannot sensibly commit to a 6-month time frame. I really can't. If I did, I'd be just not telling you the truth. I don't. The idea behind it, the idea of consultation is great, and I think the seed that came out of the Third Avenue consultation process was actually born out in this very room after a community consultation process was set up, and it was developed by TMR in regard to, and in conjunction with council, by the way, not taken away from council, to canvass as many local ideas from as broad a spectrum of opinion as they possibly could. The difficulty with that is that while the consultative process was reasonably robust, it ultimately didn't lead anywhere. So I'm all for consultation. Interestingly enough, one of the first things the LNP did last time in government was take consultation clauses out of industrial agreements. I'm all for consultation, but it's got to actually lead somewhere. That's not to say that every party is going to get their own way. It doesn't work that way. But you've got to be able to demonstrate that there is a value in the consultative process. The idea behind this is very sound. Can I commit to it in can I commit to actioning this in 6 months? No, I sensibly can't. I'm sorry.
So I think, well, hopefully it's been made clear, is that transport solutions are a key priority for our electorate. So integrated transport solutions, when we look at public transport, we look at road networks, we look at active transport plans, are all part of a bigger puzzle. Now, I'm committed to working with local governments, got a great relationship with our new council from this year, and also with our federal member. And part of that is working together to figure out, in very simple terms, who's going to pay for what to get the best outcomes for our community. Now, what I do know is that those 4 children of mine, at the moment, do I feel like they can ride to school, ride to sport, ride to the shops safely? And the answer to that is no. And we know that all of the parts of the puzzle need to come together to form part of a plan. So when the question is in such a way, can you commit to an in-principle agreement within 6 months? I don't know if anyone's watched Utopia, but that sounds a little bit, I guess the same as you, Jason, is that I will commit to working with community groups, local government, federal government, to make sure that we actually get outcomes and get things done for Caloundra.
Thank you very much. So it certainly is a great document. Again, I probably can't say that I would be able to commit to that in 6 months, but I'm certainly committed to engaging with the stakeholders. There's some really great plans in that document, particularly the mass transit system and those active transport, the renewable clean energy with the hydrogen is fabulous. And I also noted that there was an extension of public transport out to the airport, which makes sense to me. So I'd have to probably give you a similar answer to the other two, that to actually say that we would commit to that within 6 months. I don't think we could, but certainly a really great document and something that I'd be very keen to work with.
Okay, we'll start with you, Kendall. It's not my job to have an opinion on anyone's politics, but you are an exceptionally good microphone hander across there, Jason, so thank you so much for playing that role this evening. What do you identify as key concerns around the level of crime on the Sunshine Coast? What types of prevention, early prevention and deterrence are you committing to deliver?
So crime is actually the #1 priority for the LNP for this state election. So I've got some notes here just because we have completed so much work on this and have so many really strong critical policies around it. So since 2015 on the Sunshine Coast, car theft is up 100%. General theft is up 24% and assaults are up 222%. Almost every person in this room would have been a victim of crime or know someone who's a victim of crime, you know, in a big increase in repeat offenders in particular. So the first thing the LNP has committed to doing, if we win government this month, is to rewrite the Youth Justice Act. Now, part of that is a provision in that legislation that says detention is a last resort, and we will remove that this year. Now, part of our policies around youth crime is our adult crime, adult time policy, which is really referring to consequences for action. So if you are a 17-year-old and you break into someone's home, their own home, and steal their car, and you know you're fully aware of what you're doing, then you will have the consequences of those of an adult. Now, that's not to say that it's all about locking up kids, but a 17-year-old knows that they're doing the wrong thing if they break into someone's home. So we are scaffolding that with gold standard early intervention programs, because we all know that the most effective way is to prevent it from happening in the first place, as well as if a youth offender does enter detention, they will then have a 12-month monitoring, mentoring and rehab program to give them the very best chance of not ending back up in detention. So we're scaffolding early intervention with detention with rehab. What we do know is that the victim's rights are lower under the current system than the rights of the perpetrator, and we absolutely know that what we're doing right now is not working and we need to approach this differently.
Thank you so much. So I would really all commend you to look at yesterday's press club, where Commissioner Hollins from the Australian Health Rights Commission outlined why those plans just do not work and how we need evidence-based approach to youth violence. Currently, Queensland locks up more kids than anywhere else in Australia every night. 90% of those kids reoffend. So you might feel safe while they're in there, but they're going to come out and they're going to be better criminals and they will reoffend. We spent $2.6 billion on expanding youth and adult prisons, and it costs $1 million a year to lock up a child. In contrast, we've got 2 residential drug and alcohol facilities for children, which have 13 beds per night. So when they tell you that they're going to do rehab, they ain't doing it. What we need to do is look at the underlying causes of youth crime, and they're poverty, housing, and lack of safe housing, and a lack of engagement in education and employment. We can't cure this disease if we don't look at the underlying problem.
Thank you. I'm going to quote the officer in charge of the Caloundra Police Station, who said at a meeting I was at about an hour before I arrived here, we live in one of the safest regions in Queensland. Now, Caloundra has crime, it will have crime tomorrow, it will have crime 20 years down the track. That's not to say that you don't address it, but we mustn't overstate the fact that the crime rate in the Caloundra division, according to the Caloundra Police, is just slightly above half of what it was 20 years ago. And if anyone thinks that the police are inventing those statistics, I suggest you take it up with them. They have very strong opinions on it. But you've got to back them up. So that's what we've done in Caloundra. Just recently we signed a contract for a police helicopter, the first dedicated police helicopter that we've had that we will share with Sunshine Coast and Harvey Bay. The thing travels about 700 kilometres an hour, so it's going to get to Harvey Bay quite quickly. But it is based in Caloundra. I can tell you, our local police are extremely pleased. We have opened a new police station down in Aura with extra police, and we have put the ANPR cameras, the hidden cameras that detect stolen cars as they come up the highway, because we know that our crime in Caloundra is imported from the northern suburbs of Brisbane, so these cameras ping them as they come up the highway, which is why unlawful entry has actually gone into decline in the Caloundra Police Division. Again, those are not Labor stats, those are not LNPs or Green stats, those are from the Queensland Police. Anyone who thinks that this government is soft on crime, I've got a statistic that I actually have really mixed feelings about. So Queensland at the moment, if you take a snapshot on any given day, has more kids incarcerated than Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia combined. That is not the symptom of a state that is soft on crime, but I'm just not sure that that's a great outcome. I think the early intervention strategies, FASD clinics, all those sort of things have to be taken in conjunction. You will not arrest your way out of crime.
Okay, we will start with you, Peter. You've got the microphone. This is an environment question. Given the state of the Bribie Island breakthrough, what are your plans to manage the Bribie Island and Pumicestone Passage issues, and how will these be implemented?
Thank you so much. So I recently had the absolute privilege of going on one of the Pumicestone Passage eco cruises and seeing the Bribie Island breakthrough and the effects that that's having. We know that these are due to ex-tropical cyclone Seth, and we are going to see more extreme weather events with climate change. We're going to see less frequent but more intense cyclones. So firstly, we need to address the underlying issue with climate action, and we need to prepare our communities for more extreme weather events. We need to have climate resilient communities. We know that this particular breakthrough has caused increased tides in Golden Beach and on Diamond Head. It's required changes to the seawalls and upgrading of the seawalls. It's changed the sand quality, and it's also meant that there's been backflow through sewage, and we're having concerns about water quality. So it's not a simple answer. We certainly need to look obviously at the underlying causes of this disease again, but also get ready to manage what we can no longer avoid. And that is going to be working with local government and agencies so that we can get prepared for these weather events.
Thank you. So since getting elected in 2020, there's been a few things happened on the passage already. That breakthrough happened 6 weeks after I got elected, so that was a bit of an eye-opener. There were a lot of MPs in Caloundra who watched the Bribie Island get thinner and thinner and didn't actually do anything, and then 6 weeks after I got elected, the passage has reinvented itself, as a passage does about every 10 to 15 years. But prior to that, I was able to help out Coast Guard with getting some nav markers moved. They had a lot of difficulty getting moved for such a long time. The speed limit in the Pumicestone Passage used to be 40 knots. There are warships that can't do 40 knots, and the speed limit in the passage was 40. So we got that cut in half, and that also reduces boat wake, which also reduces some of the scalloping on the interior edges. And then once we got that reduced, there was the idea that there would need to be a government presence to keep an eye on it. So 2 state budgets ago, I got a permanent MSQ officer assigned, and his or her office will be at the new Pelican Waters Marina, and he'll be keeping an eye on boats, keeping an eye on boat safety, but also keeping an eye on the passage. There seems to be an idea about what's happened to the passage, that it can somehow be undone, or that we can fix it, fill it in, or rock wall or geobag our way out of the current situation. I'm not sure that's the case. I have met with the people from TAP who have forgotten more about the Pumicestone Passage than most of us will ever know. I've heard their concerns. There are some points there that we agree on. There are some points there that we don't agree on, because I also have to take advice from other government agencies. But the idea that what can go on in the passage can be reversed by another layer of bureaucracy sitting on top of the existing layer, I think is a little faulty.
So our announcement about the Sunshine Coast Waterways Authority, perhaps it requires a little bit of explaining. So one of the reasons why nothing happens, and nothing has happened since the Bribie breakthrough in that beautiful waterway of ours, is because there are actually 17 different government departments or bodies that have some kind of authority over it. So if you literally find a discarded boat and you start pulling around, you'll get bumped from one to one to one to one, and nothing happens. A Waterways Authority is a legislative body that holds jurisdiction over all of those other departments. It's a one-stop shop that involves community involvement and council, and it's modelled on the one down in the Gold Coast. So this is not a brand new concept. It's what works in other parts of our country to protect our waterways. Let's replicate it and make the necessary changes so it fits here. Now, this Sunshine Coast Waterways Authority is the best, most proudest thing that so far I've been able to do for our community, because it was community led. So we had the Coast Guard involved, we had TAP involved, we had the Pumicestone Passage management body group involved. We had John Groves, our local historian, involved. We had the developers of the Pelican Waters Marina involved. And despite the fact that, well, this is, you know, you can make your comments, but when you've got all of those different people all saying the same thing, that is really powerful. And that is that something must be done because that is in a critical state. Now, it's not just about boating safety, it's about water quality, it's about the risk of our entire foreshore and the assets involved with that. Even council acknowledges that they're at risk. It is so critical that we protect this before it's too late, and the role of the Sunshine Coast Waterways Authority will be to bring in all of those people with local knowledge, bring in experts and decide what the ultimate outcome is. But I suspect, after all of this year of research, that will end up with a conclusion that the Bribie Island breakthrough must be stabilised at all costs in order to protect what we have here.
Okay, Jason, you can keep the microphone this time.
Okay.
So this is our final question that they were prepared for. Like I said, this one just half an hour before. And it is on social and affordable housing. What policies are you committing to in order to balance the need for short-term holiday accommodation with the need for affordable housing, rental and ownership for the Caloundra electorate? Jason.
So it's almost a repetition of the previous question. So there'll be
Just like to see if you answer the same way or differently. It's
good,
a test.
Good. Keep us on our toes. So land release is obviously one. Affordability is one, and cost of living impacts on those things. I was at a construction site today of Tay Avenue, and the mix of units in that development is already starting to look at some intelligent design around X number of single bedrooms, X number for holiday rentals, and X number for permanent tenancy. There's also, we need to have a sensible discussion on the sunny coast about density of living. So when we talk about density, people tend to hesitate and think that we're talking about, 40-storey buildings on the foreshore, like the Gold Coast. We're not talking about that. We've got an excellent example of it in Olm Street, where there was 2 social houses there, which accommodated 3 people in each social house. They were knocked down, and just a three-storey complex was put there in its place, which will now accommodate 32 people on exactly the same footprint of land for only 3 stories. So I think we do have to have some conversations about, some sensible conversations about density. Again, I stress, I'm not talking about 40-storey skyscrapers on the high tide mark, but just increases in density right across the coast, not concentrated in particular areas, but right across the coast, because Caloundra is growing, that is inexorable, but we need to make sure that we can manage that growth and also spread that growth, because at the moment, it's all happening down the southern end of the Sunshine Coast. It's already a sort of Aura, Palm View area, so we have to look at the distribution of the population and
Kendall.
Okay, so as we, had a similar question before, so we're committed to working with local governments to unlock land. We will be delivering 1 million homes over the next 2 decades. We require better planning around that growth and that population growth and the infrastructure required to go with it. We have a $2 billion investment fund to unlock new housing and also build 53 additional social homes. We also have our solar for renters scheme where everybody wins, so electricity bills go down once again. And also what I'd really like to address is that in order to build those 1 million homes, it should be acknowledged that we also have 90,000 tradespeople short in southeast Queensland. So until we address the skills shortage here, there won't be anybody that can address the housing shortage, and all of these things are tied together in terms of future-proofing Caloundra and future-proofing Queensland. So we've committed to building a $78 million TAFE Centre of Excellence in Caloundra, and that will have a 100% focus on construction trades to motivate, inspire a whole generation and beyond of kids to upskill, make becoming a tradie a really exciting and wonderful option, and it's accessible because it's right here in Caloundra. So, thank you.
Thank you. So yes, again, I would reiterate our plans for public housing, affordable and sustainable housing, and building homes, which are mortgages for people who want to buy. I agree that we need responsible development, that we do need to think about using the space that we've already got developed and making that denser, but sustainable and livable. Public housing doesn't have to be horrible. We can make really beautiful public housing. I do appreciate that Caloundra is a tourist city and we do need accommodation, that we need to balance our need for tourism with our needs as residents. I certainly have concerns about short-term rentals like Airbnbs where we have empty houses for much of the year, and we need to consider how to restrict that practice. I would also acknowledge that we're going to probably need more tourist accommodation with the Olympics coming, but I'd like to see that how we could work on that and maybe then using that accommodation for social and affordable housing after the Olympics so that we all win.
Okay, these are the interesting ones because I don't know and they don't know, so let's hope I can pronounce what the questions are. We will start with you, Peta, since you've got the microphone. Okay, so recently SCOO has had a rise in Tier 3 escalations requiring service reductions. What is your plan to improve public hospital capacity and waiting times?
Thank you. Yes, so as a doctor in Queensland Health, it's not at all surprising to me that we're having problems with our public health system. It's grossly underfunded and understaffed. So Tier 3 means that we have to reduce activity, and that means cancellation of elective surgeries and treatments that can wait for an category 1 and some category 2 procedures. So that's obviously a huge impact on people who are waiting surgery, on surgical wait lists. So the Greens want to firstly tackle that by increasing funding to public hospitals, so to ensure and build new public hospitals, but also taking the pressure off the public hospitals. Those 200 free GP clinics, which we'll build, they will be GPs who are salaried, so they don't have those pressures of managing that business. There'll also be access to allied health and mental health services as well as nurses. And that's going to take the pressure off emergency departments because people will actually be able to see their GPs in a timely manner and afford to be able to see their GPs and not have to front up to the emergency department. Thank you.
Since it's not one you had before? Yep, just go along.
Yeah, give us a...
Yeah, so SCOO has had a rise in Tier 3 escalations requiring service reductions. What is your plan to improve public hospital capacity and waiting times?
So as you might have seen, we've announced as part of the commitments across Queensland, the building of satellite hospitals. So not only is this in addition to the new hospitals that were already underway and the extensions to existing hospitals like has gone on in Nambour, an additional ward, additional mental health unit in SCOO, but also the building of these satellite hospitals right across Queensland. They've been attacked, they've been pilloried, and they've been hugely successful. Between the Redlands and the Humberstone satellite hospitals, 200,000 people have gone through and received treatment. Now that is an additional service and it takes pressure off existing services. So there's a commitment from myself and Rob Skelton, the member for Nicklin, that we will build a satellite hospital here on the Sunshine Coast, and we will continue to fund and protect our health system. We will not cut money from our health system, as has been done by the LNP in the past, and we will not sack health workers in the thousands, as has been done by the LNP in the past. We will protect them. And I would just like to add too, there's a real shout out to the staff at SCOO. The presentations at SCOO, There's been an 83% reduction in the number of patients waiting longer than clinically recommended for their surgeries. Now, when you consider where SCOO has come from post-COVID, so over COVID there was cancellations of procedures held less than crooked while they were dealing with the pandemic. So they've had to not only get past that backlog, but deal with their ordinary business, and they have still managed a huge reduction in people waiting for elective surgery. That is absolutely fantastic organisation.
Kendall, what is your plan to improve public hospital capacity and waiting times?
So we have a plan to give more authority back to doctors and nurses to actually figure out how to run a really effective health system. We have absolutely no plans to cut any jobs, and that one and only time that we held government almost a decade ago is not looking to the future by focusing on something that is so old news. You know, we have absolutely no plans in cutting jobs. In fact, we need more doctors, we need more nurses, we need more teachers. We have had a record health budget for 8 years in a row, and yet our numbers are getting worse and worse in terms of ambulance ramping, in terms of there are over 16,000 Queenslanders on a wait list to see a specialist at the moment. And so we want to make sure we have very well supported hospitals, doctors and nurses, but also with a focus on supporting the primary healthcare system, which are your GPs. So anyone who shouldn't be in hospital, if they can access the primary healthcare system, is a win for the entire health system.
Keep the microphone. We'll start with you, Kendall. Don't get out starting on this one. We've got time for a couple more. What has your party done to improve education on the Sunshine Coast in the past 20 years?
Well, considering we have only held government for that one term. But personally, as someone who comes from an education background, and that is actually where my personal true passion lies, and which is probably a good thing if you have so many children, what I have seen, and the reason why I left teaching is because by the time I left, we were having a literacy meeting every week, a numeracy meeting every week, a year level meeting every week, a staff meeting every week, a professional development day, and honestly it became, to me, less about actually going to work and educating children and more about data, compliance, regulation. Now, we've seen that happen in multiple sectors. So what I do see is, a struggle for Queensland to actually attract and retain teachers, and there's so many ways that we could do better. What we have committed to is more teachers, in the first instance, because we want a really well-supported workforce that can go to work and do what they got into that profession to do, which is educate and have great relationships with children.
Jason, what has your party done to improve education on the Sunshine Coast in the past 20 years?
So the Labor Party has built 3 schools in Caloundra in the last 4 years. And I don't know if you've seen any of the modern schools, visiting your kids and grandkids, but they are absolutely fantastic. The resources that schools have these days are absolutely incredible. Now there is a compare and contrast here. You've heard that a lot from me tonight, and this question will be no exception. Does anyone know what year it was when the LNP opened a school in Caloundra?
I think that's no.
No, so no, right. So it was 19. It was 19.
3 years in 34 years.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to return to Jason.
It was
Thank you.
1983. It was 1980. I didn't frame the question, so. It was 1983. I'm pretty sure they haven't been out of power since 1983. But that was the last time the LNP opened a school in Caloundra. The question was posed. We've opened 3 in the last 4 years. And if some people are struggling with that, I'm terribly sorry. But that's a genuine commitment to education across the whole of the Sunshine Coast. In fact, if you've got a moment, I'll throw in another compare and contrast. We won't good. I'll throw in another one. My party has opened more schools in Caloundra than...
Hang on, this is a Labor Party.
Yeah, that's the Labor Party, yeah.
Okay.
Then the LNP opened in Queensland the last time they were in government.
Peta?
In my state.
Okay, let's keep this. You're actually being recorded tonight, thanks to Charles from View News. So if we can just keep this and respect Peter's time.
Thank you. Obviously, the Greens have not been in power in Sunshine Coast. However, we would urge you to put us into the balance of power. We know that when we are there, we force these guys to make their decisions and to work with communities. We want free, fully funded education. We know our schools are public schools are underfunded, and we want to actually put money into schools. We want to see teachers properly paid. And we also want to help families by making sure that they can actually afford everything that their child needs when they're in school. They shouldn't be having to pay for extras and voluntary contributions just to have their books and their excursions paid for. You can put us in there and we can make a difference.
Okay, so like I said, we are going to get you home on time, and this question and the closing remarks are between you and the door prize, which we know is very important this evening. So Jason, we'll get you to start. You haven't started yet on one of these unplanned questions. What specific actions will the state take to enhance the SCRC for coastal and inland defences in response to rising tidal heights and flooding? How will you definitively address the associated social impacts? Do you need that again? Sunshine Coast Regional Council. Yep. That's a bit I do know from March. What specific actions will the state take to enhance the SCRC for coastal and inland defences in response to rising tidal heights and flooding? How will you definitively address the associated social impacts?
So Council has a very good coastal hazard adaptation plan, and in the past couple of years we've worked quite well with Council addressing these issues as they've come up. So the asbestos contamination here was an example of that, as was the erosion around TS Onslow and the park being washed away as a consequence of the breakthrough. That was a lengthy process, that's for sure, but a sum of money has been afforded to Sunny Coast Council, and Sunny Coast Council is doing some very good work using that money to bolster the shore opposite the breakthrough, and also it will put a break wall in. Once it restores that park, it will also put a break wall in to stop that park washing away in the future. So that's an example of what can be done when state and council work collaboratively, as we do most of the time. We've got two councillors here. We don't agree on everything. We've had some, we've had some disagreements and we've had some bargains, but most of the time I've worked quite effectively with the local councillors, and council and state have worked reasonably effectively in managing some of these coastal hazards, including just recently with liaising with the Powerboat Club itself. And part of the difficulty they are having, and part of the difficulty the boat ramp down there is having, there is an intermediate solution that I think we're working towards now around alleviating some of the sand build-up on that boat ramp, while at the same time trying to assist some sand building up in front of this Powerboat Club. So it can be done, and it is being done, and you can actually see it in action as you see some of the foreshore restoration that's going on now.
Peta?
Thank you so much. Again, I would be looking at the underlying causes of why we're getting higher tides, and that is certainly related to climate change. We need to take action on that quickly, and also build resilience within our coastal communities. We certainly need to work, as Jason said, with council on ensuring that we can live here and live here in safety in regards to water quality and movement of our environment.
Do you need a refresh?
No, do fine, thank you. I think everyone. So, you know, as I've already mentioned before, this issue that I'm actually very passionate about, I don't know if I can, you know, make it clear that the Golden Beach foreshore and along our Caloundra, beautiful part of the world, is seriously at risk. And these things, this waterway here is firmly a state government responsibility. So also committed to working with council, because council is responsible for the foreshore. But Golden Beach along here is now a designated flood zone as the tides are rising, but a big part of that is what we do about that Bribey breakthrough. Now, the current government's position on it, in writing, on record, has been, let's just see what happens, leave it up to Mother Nature, which only works in my mind if there has been no human intervention. Now, the point at which Bribey breakthrough broke through was at the point where the shipping channel changes direction. It's the point of the shipping channel, which is human intervention. We have oyster leases in the water that were decommissioned 70 years ago. That's human intervention. Now, when I say that this is a priority for me, for you, for our community, this is a priority. And working with the Sunshine Coast Council is critical on that, and they also know how critical it is. So, Sunshine Coast Waterways Authority is a massive, massive step forward for this issue.
Okay, so we do have more questions, however we are out of time, but please make sure you approach your the candidates and ask those questions. And like we said, we are providing you with their contact details so that you can make sure you get the answers that you need before you have to walk in to that polling booth. So we have offered the candidates 2 minutes to do a closing remark so that they can have their final say before we then draw the Lucky Door prize and officially wrap up this evening. So we will start closing remarks from Kendall. We'll give it to you on 1 minute. We'll give you a 1 minute warning.
Okay, well, thank you all for your patience. I know these nights can be long nights, but the number one takeaway I would love you to hear from me tonight is that the LNP and I, for Caloundra, are not focused on the past. We are focused on the future and future-proofing Caloundra. So part of that, we've got a statewide plan: health, housing, crime, cost of living, and I know that they're all important to our community because you brought them all up, but the plan for Caloundra is very clear. It is fixing our traffic congestion with investment into infrastructure because we are so far behind. It is the TAFE Centre of Excellence to inspire, motivate, excite and address the skills shortage generations to come. It is protecting our natural environment and our natural asset for all of the reasons that we know are important, and that is our plan for Caloundra. And that's just the beginning. So if you are invested in what looks likely to be an LNP government, do not take the risk here of giving up this once in a lifetime opportunity. We are talking about over $500 million of election commitments to this state seat, because I am the person, when everybody else says Caloundra Road is too big, too hard, too expensive, a Waterways Authority is too big, too hard, too expensive, that will be able to turn a no into a yes for our community. And that's what we need. Mistake here. We shoulder the burden of the population growth for the entire region, and at all levels of government we see money going north of Kawana. Do we agree? Yes. And yet here we are, the ones who have the influx of people, which we all want to live here. We love it, I want to live here. I don't blame other people for wanting to live here, but if we do not do correct planning and correct investment into infrastructure, what do these roads look like in another 2 years? in another 3 years. Put 35,000 people still to go into Aura that's already been approved, a potential 70,000 in BUR East. If we do not address first and foremost the road congestion issue, it'll be very difficult to live here. And I'm telling you, those projects will commence. If we win this election, they will commence in the next term of government, because I will not allow it to not happen, having gotten this far after 12 months of lobbying and campaigning for Caloundra.
It's about cost of living. This election is about cost of living. All of the other things are important, of course. Your road infrastructure, education, all that sort of thing is important. But what we have learned in the last 2 to 3 years is it is about cost of living. People will not be driving on roads if they can't afford to run their fuel, run their cars. People will need alternatives to cars, which is why this government is the first government to be delivering the largest transport infrastructure project, not just Caloundra, but the Sunshine Coast has ever seen. That spur line coming in from BUR is the biggest spur line for public transport that Queensland has ever built. It's even bigger than the Redcliffe one that took so long to produce. We've got to give alternatives to cars as well as room for cars. And I say that as the last MP for Caloundra to have built a major road since Micah Hearn. The Bells Creek Arterial came in at about $12 million a kilometre. Now, it's a great road, it's a great piece of infrastructure, but building roads like that, we are just chasing our tail, particularly if we commit $400 million to $1.5 billion worth of transport infrastructure. It simply can't be done, no matter how passionate you are about road infrastructure. I want to continue our commitment to education and health. The satellite hospital is what's going to help our doctors and nurses. Real-time data and putting doctors and nurses in, putting doctors in charge of the hospitals so that they can collect real-time data. That's great, but no one in the emergency ward was ever assisted or ever bandaged up by real-time data. No nurse ever went to a bedside and said, I'm sorry, I don't have the equipment we need, but we do have some real-time data because our HHS is calling the shots now. That is not the way forward. We actually need beds, we need bricks and mortar, we need more health staff and more health infrastructure. That's right. And we must stop attacking our youth. The absolutely appalling things that are being said at the moment about our youth. So you've got the shadow minister going into youth watch houses saying, oh my God, isn't this terrible? It's terrible that you're incarcerated here. We shouldn't be doing this. And then walking out of the same watch house and giving a press conference and saying, these are all urban terrorists. That was the term used. We cannot just keep attacking our youth and thinking that that's not going to have an effect. Our youth are fantastic. I see them in action in our schools all the time. So early intervention, and I don't mean some $50 million excursion around the world like the LNP is planning. I mean proper early intervention.
Are we at time?
Are we calling it time? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you once again to everyone for attending and for CRA for organising. I'd like to just summarise what we would like to present to you as the Greens. We're going to try and fix the housing crisis. We're by freezing rents and building 100,000 well-designed public homes to rent or buy below market rate. We want to tackle climate change by investing in public renewables, establishing new green manufacturing and a public mining company, because we know that the best job for a miner is another mining job. We want to establish universal free healthcare, cheaper groceries by breaking up the Coles and Woolies duopoly, fully funded and free education. We need to take back control with public ownership. We've seen over the decades with Labor and LNP privatising our essential services, how that's worked out for us. And we're going to do that by making big corporations pay their fair share. I know they're big. As I said, they're bold. I'm really excited to share them with you. And thank you very much again for having us.
So I can appreciate how hard it is to deal with the big issues in 2 minutes, but we obviously need just the high level this evening so that you can help make your decision. So thank you for keeping and respecting to our time limits. That was really appreciated because we all can get out of here. But we also really wanted to make sure that you did get enough to inform your vote later this month. I would like to thank Charles, like I said before, from View News, who has actually been recording this evening for you, and that actually helps people that couldn't make it tonight to also get informed in their decisions. So without that, tonight would have been limited to the people here. So thank you so much, Charles, for being part of it. It is a courageous thing to do, to put yourself forward, so thank you for doing so. And whoever is lucky enough to make government, we hope that you will represent us proudly. And with that, let's draw...
And on behalf of the Caloundra Residents Association, we'd like you to present to you a gift of our appreciation for being such a wonderful MC for the night. Thank you so much.